Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Alex. I'm a real estate investor, and today I want to pull back the curtain and really just show you guys how real estate investors actually make money. So, the proof, promise, and plan. The proof is I am a real estate investor myself. I've used this strategy many, many times. It started in 2019, and I have over $1 million in assets under management. So, the promise is by the end of this video, I promise that you will understand exactly how this works and this concept of the wedge. You'll have a good understanding of it and how to use it to your advantage. And the plan here is it's really three things: is one, understanding the wedge and why it exists. Two is how to take advantage of that, the different strategies you have. And three is how to amplify that. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first part is understanding the wedge. What is the wedge and why does it exist? So here is the wedge. Here's a graph. Wow, that's really bad. Let's start that over. Bam, bam. On this side, you have, let's type that, ARV, which stands for after repair value. So I'll actually just type that out. After repair value. And this is after repair value is the value of the property after you've totally fixed it up, renovated it. If we're talking about like a single family house. So after repair value. And then on this axis, let's say this is the repairs that are needed. And here, so this is the ARV line. Bang. So, and then here is another line. And this is what's important. Come on, let me draw something. So this is ARV. And this is MV. MV stands for market value. So this is what the property is actually going to sell for, is MV or market value. And you can see that there is a gap here in between ARV, after repair value, and market value as the repairs needed goes up. So over here we have $0 in repairs. Over here, let's say that's like 100,000 in repairs. This gap gets wider and wider and wider. And this area here in between these two lines, that's what the wedge is. And that is what we're going to have to take advantage of here to make some money. So the cool thing here is, like, let's say right here is 50,000. You guys get the point. Hopefully you can still read that. So that's $50,000 in repairs. So at this point here, the cool thing is this distance, this gap, is greater than $50,000. And this is what you need to understand. So if you're the reason that this gap is greater than the repairs needed is because you kind of need to look at it from like, hey, you're a home buyer. You have two options. Option A is just buy a totally fixed up house for $300,000. Everything's all done, move-in ready. You could live in it tomorrow. It's great. Or you could buy a house for $250 that needs $50,000 in work, and then you have to go through the headache and the hassle of finding contractors, managing the contractors, the risk of them taking your money and running, like the time, the several months it might take to do this renovation. There's also like where you're gonna live in the meantime. So obviously, if those are your two options, you're just gonna go with the $300,000 house that's already done. So that is what really creates this wedge, that it's greater than $50,000. And that is how investors basically make their money. That's why the wedge exists, and that's the whole concept of what we're looking at here and what we're doing. We're putting $50,000 into a property, and we're getting more than $50,000 in equity. So that is the wedge. That is why it exists. And now let's talk about taking advantage of that. So two main strategies. If I had to just kind of group everything into two buckets, one is like fix and flip, and one is buy and hold. So if we're looking at fix and flip, fairly straightforward, right? So we buy a property, for 150. We put 50,000 into it, and bam, now it's worth 300,000 or something. that is essentially, by doing this, by putting that $50,000 into the property, you've created that 150 in equity. And that's just literally the basis of how all flippers make their money. Alternatively, if you wanted to hold on to this asset and rent it out, same concept applies though. You still bought that property for 150, you still put 50 into it, and now you have $150,000 in equity in the property, right? So this how do you take advantage of that 150 if you're not going to sell it, right? It's obvious if you sell it, you get that money back, you can roll into the next deal, XYZ. If you're going to do a buy and hold strategy, a couple of different things you can do here. One is you can do the BRRRR strategy. So I'm sure you've heard of that before. It's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So that's kind of cool because if you have this house here and it is worth 300,000, wish I could draw this for you and it didn't look so ugly. But here's the house you have now. It's worth $300,000, and all together you bought it for 150 and you put 50 into it. So that leaves you at $200,000 in the property, but it's worth 300,000. If you refinance, so here's the cool thing. You can actually pull out about, depending on your lender, call it 75% of the after repair value though. So you can take 300,000, 300, 175. So you can pull out 225,000, which you can see is $25,000 greater than the money that you have into the property. So with this strategy, it's kind of cool. You get less cash up front probably than if you were to just flip it, but you made $25,000 and now you have a asset that's going to pump off cash flow for you every single month, and it's going to go up in value over time, and it's going to allow you to pay less in taxes, and it's going to give you all the other benefits of owning the real estate. So those are kind of the two main options here. You don't have to refinance. You can actually borrow against that equity in other ways. You can do a HELOC, talk to your banker. I'm sure there's 500 different ways to do it, but essentially you can leverage that equity without even having to sell the property and still get that cash. And the cool thing too about that $25,000 is it's not income. So it's not taxed like income. So it's actually a debt that you're taking out. So you also save quite a bit on taxes that way. And now we get into amplifying this. So this is literally like the first way I bought a property, literally just on the MLS. It needed $30,000 worth of work, so I put that $30,000 into it. But after I was done, it was worth like 60 grand more. So that's fine. That's great. It was literally just on the MLS. Now, the way to amplify this is to not buy properties at market value, to actually get a deal on properties. So let's draw another line. Here is like if we get a deal on the property. Now that makes another gap here. And that's like the gravy zone. Like if you're good at sales and marketing, then you can increase this part here. So that's awesome. So how do you buy properties underneath market value? Typically, the way to do that is you need to employ one of a number of strategies. The main one is go off market, and you can generate your own leads that are not on MLS. So the thing about a deal on MLS is it's very, very rarely not going to sell at market value because there's so many different eyeballs on it. It'd be rare that 500 different investors look at a deal and it sells significantly below market value, like as is value. Just because, like, hey, if it's actually a deal, like somebody would just buy it, right? Everybody's looking at it, everyone can see it. But if you go off market and if you do your own cold calling, cold texting, direct mail, XYZ strategy to generate these leads, now potentially you're the only person looking at that deal. And if you are providing value to that homeowner, if you're their best solution, if you're fixing problems for them, if you're making it easy for them, if you're providing value to them in some way, shape, or form, you can work out a deal where there's not 500 other investors competing with you to buy that deal. You solve the homeowner's problem and you get the property below market value. So now you get the advantage of the wedge and the fact that you got a deal on it. Just to dive a little bit deeper into these off-market strategies, like I said, cold call, cold text, direct mail. Those are going to be your major ones. There's also like you could pay per lead service, like when people Google need to sell my house fast.com. There's lots of services like that. But if I had to pick one and just say, hey, like start with this one and then master this first, it's cold calling. And I know a lot of people are going to want to avoid that because it's uncomfortable and it sucks, and you get rejected like 1,000 times a day, and that's uncomfortable. But there's a couple of major advantages. One is the skills that it develops is huge, and two is just every other strategy is like has the goal of getting on the phone with the homeowner who wants to sell their house, and cold calling kind of like skips all those steps. It's literally just you call, maybe you get somebody who wants to sell their house, and you're there, and you can solve a problem, and you make it happen. So that's essentially what the wedge is. The wedge is the difference between the after repair value of the property and the market value of the property. As the repairs needed goes up, it creates that wedge that's bigger and bigger and bigger. And then how do you take advantage of that wedge? You can either fix the property up, resell it, or you could fix the property up, refinance it, pull your equity out, keep it as a rental. And then how to amplify that wedge, how to make even more money is you get a deal. So you can do that via off-market sources, your own lead generation, maybe buying from a wholesaler, something along those lines where you actually get a deal on the property. So that is essentially the wedge, why it exists, how to take advantage of it, and how to amplify it. So hopefully you guys learned something in this video, and let me know what you'd like to see in the next one.